Hello everyone, welcome. We're joined by ClearPeople today. We're talking about leveraging Microsoft 365 and Teams as an end-to-end collaboration platform. I'm just going to wait for people to filter in before we start doing proper introductions. I think we're going to have we've got quite a lot of people coming in today, it's great. So we're just going to wait for them to pile into the room. Let's hope that eventually we're going to be doing more of this in person, but it's great to have you joining us today. I'm just going to put the chat, if everyone enables the chat function. And then as you come in, it would be great if you can say who you are and where you're listening in from. My colleague Emma is in the chat room and she'll be monitoring your questions. So we'll make sure that this is a really interactive session, which is obviously why we're here. So hopefully you come armed with plenty of questions. And any minute now, I'll start introducing the team. Hi Debbie from Texas. Thank you for introducing yourself. It's good to have you. Give it another minute or two just while everyone piles in. And you can use I think everyone's so familiar with this now. Hi Liz from Big Hand. I'm sure we're all really familiar with Zoom, but obviously you can use the chat function during this webinar. And you can use the Q&A, and I know Gabriel will be happy to be answering any Q&As if you don't want to deal with it in the chat. But as you post in the chat, we'll make sure I'm going to be outlining how this webinar is going to go. But at any point you can jump in. We're really encouraging you. Oh, there we go. It's feeling a bit quiet now. Hi Jamie from Beechcraft, Sally from Array, Elwyn from Time Slice. Hi guys. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really good to have you on today. So we're going to start doing some introductions. So we have no particular order, I should say. So ClearPeople co-founder and director Gabriel Karawani. Gabriel founded ClearPeople in 2003 with CEO Katja Linossi. He describes himself on LinkedIn as more than Nordic, and I'm hoping that we might have time during this webinar to find out what that means, although it's a pretty packed agenda, to be honest with you. Hi, Gabriel.
Hello, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. And then we have Gowling WRG IT Director Shane Scott. Shane started at Gowling in 2020. Before that was Information Systems Director at Shoesmiths for 7.5 years. When Shane joined Gowlings, I thought he was ignoring my messages, but it turned out I was cleverly messaging on his Shoesmiths email. So I hope all was forgiven. Hi, Shane.
Hi, Caroline. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us. And last but not least, we have Microsoft's Director of Modern Work and Security Business Group, Nick Hederman. Nick's been at Microsoft for, is it 16 years, Nick?
It is, yeah.
Well 16 years. I was trying to tot up because they've got he and his team have a portfolio of products, including Microsoft 365, Office 365, Windows 10, Enterprise Mobility Suite, and Microsoft Teams, among other offerings. And Nick's proclaimed mission is to make sure people love the Microsoft cloud, which I think thanks to the pandemic, they really do. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
We're going to, the way this webinar is going to work. So we're going to talk to Nick about the shift to Microsoft Teams. Obviously, we've talked quite a lot about this, but it's really great to have Nick on to talk about a successful hybrid strategy, plus any pitfalls to avoid. So Nick, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Then we've got a demo from Gabriel of Atlas, which we'll just come to in a little bit. And then last but not least, I think perhaps we're keeping everyone listening in deliberately, Shane. We're going to come to talk about Shane's experience in using Atlas to date in the collaboration space. But Gabriel, if we can just chat first, for anybody listening in who either doesn't know ClearPeople or wants to get to know you better, tell us a bit about, so you founded 2003, that's right?
That's right, yeah.
I did get that right. Yeah, and so tell us a little about what ClearPeople does and sort of the journey, because I know you've shifted from services to products. So tell us a little bit more about ClearPeople for anyone who doesn't know you.
Yeah, but well, I mean, going way back, and this feels like, well, it is a long time ago. That's why it feels like a long time ago. Way back when we started, it was really all about being a great service company, providing a fantastic service, and helping our customers to achieve what they, the best they could with technology. And very, very quickly, we sort of focused in on the Microsoft sort of partner ecosystem. And I think within a year, we were a Microsoft partner. Within 2 years, we were a Gold partner. And it became really all about taking best advantage of that technology. SharePoint became part of that very, very quickly. So within maybe 3-4 years, we were predominantly focused on sort of that classic system integrator role, consultancy, professional services role, helping our customers build great systems on that kind of technology. Fast forwarding, it became clear that we were doing a lot of things again and again, and we could really achieve more by productizing. I think maybe from your side. Maybe. Can you hear the echo?
Nick, you've got probably audio.
It was you, Nick. He's not used to using Zoom. It's all about Teams.
Oh, that's better. Oh, that's a relief. I was thinking that something had happened to my audio, but actually that's resolved now. Sorry about that. Carry on, Gabriel.
So as Microsoft started shifting into the cloud, as Microsoft started to invest a lot into Office 365 and Microsoft 365, became clear there's something here that we could do for our customers by productizing and having a platform basically on top of the platform that pulls it all together. And that was sort of the vision we started playing around with, should I say, maybe 4 years ago, and just over 3 years ago, we really sort of pushed the pedal down on that and said, okay, no, we're going to make that shift towards being product first. And Atlas was basically born. And so that journey with Atlas started about 3.5 years ago. And now I'm very happy to say it is really about Atlas front and center. But the mission, you could say, is still the same. It's about getting the best out of the technology, about engaging people, engaging your employees, and making life easier in the world of technology. And when it comes to the Microsoft world, that means pulling a lot of these tools together for the end users, finding stuff easier. The amount of times we hear in our first conversations with prospects, I just can't find stuff. I mean, we literally hear that sentence again and again. And so that's one of the key challenges that we work with.
Yeah, it's such a huge issue. And so so in terms of Atlas, I'm looking forward to your demo. So you obviously, it sits on top of 365, and you provide intranet, knowledge management, collaboration. I don't know what that noise is. It's all going on, isn't it? You provide internet collaboration. So it's all going on today. I've got everything on silent.
Internal collaboration.
Everything is on silent. So collaboration, document management in one, right? And you I think the way that you describe it, you fill, perhaps we shouldn't say this about Nick, the 365 gap by bringing everything together in a customized dashboard.
Yeah, I mean, it's about a consolidated experience when you're inside of teams, outside of teams. It's really about bringing it together but leveraging all the investments you've made. So, there will be CIOs or IT directors maybe on the call now, and they will know how much they're paying for the 365 licenses, whether you need 3 or 5, and you bought additional security SKUs. And it is good value. There's a lot in there, but it's really difficult to take advantage of. And for the end users, it can get confusing and it can get daunting. Yeah. And it's really about just tying all that together, being that sort of end user employee experience platform, whatever you want to call it, on top of the platform. And because it has got all these capabilities in terms of you can manage your documents in there. And we built a lot of document management systems. In fact, with Shane, quite a while back, we built document management systems on SharePoint. We built intranets on SharePoint. We built knowledge management platforms on SharePoint. Atlas brings that together. It's not just an intranet. It's more than an intranet. It's not just a knowledge management platform. It's more than that, etc.
So we're going to come on. So as I said, I'm looking forward to the demo. And I know one of the things that people listening in will be interested in is teams. And I know that within Atlas, you don't actually have to lead teams. I think you'll probably come on to talk to us about that. So if I can bring in Nick, it's really good of you to join us. So I think if you could just talk to us, I know you don't just want to talk about teams, although that seems to be all that people talk to me about, by the way. But so what talk to us from your experience, long experience, about what factors are key to creating a successful hybrid environment. I don't know if are you going to share some slides or just talk?
Yeah, maybe I'll just put a few slides up, but it'd be great to have the conversation as well. So let me just share my screen. Should I get the right one? Just testing out my my Zoom skills here. So hopefully you can see that now, Caroline and team.
I can see it.
Great, yeah. So you know, we talk a lot about hybrid at the moment. It's clearly a conversation in the industry, and you know, we've looked carefully at the market. We've listened to over 30,000 people through our 2001 Work Trend Index survey, and there's some very clear data coming out of that, and perhaps the most obvious one is the paradox between 73% of people saying that they want some level of flexibility to remain as people come back to the sort of the workplace, but equally they value that in-person connection, and so that in its own right is a paradox, and ultimately is leading to that hybrid work conversation, and I think when we think about hybrid, we've got to think about taking the best bits of what it means to be flexible and combining that with the best bits of being together in person. We all know what that feels like, and I hope that we don't end up with it the other way around. You know, the worst bits of remote and the worst bits of being together. But maybe I'll pause there, because this kind of then goes into the next bit that talks more about how we should think about it, like as we're building out our hybrid work strategies and sort of a model for it. But yeah, that's sort of
how do you. No, thanks. So how do you, so this is one of the, everyone knows what they want, right? But the challenge is how to create it. And I think there's a danger, perhaps even I do this, of oversimplifying it. People are really sort of, you know, working hard now to try to recreate the experience of being in the office in a hybrid way. What are your sort of, you know, what would you say? How do you best recreate the experience of being in the office virtually?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few things, and in fact, this slide is quite a nice way to think about it. You've got to make sure you're thinking about your people and the way you're approaching your people. You've got to think about the place of work and the physical locations you have, and actually what a lot of the spaces look like. How are they going to support hybrid working, from the meetings that you have to the ways in which the spaces actually get used. You know, we're seeing a major demand, for example, right now for large meeting rooms for people to have team meetings in and come together and do co-collaboration. And so the role of the office, I think, is going to change quite dramatically. And then also making sure you're thinking through your process as well. And that's where technology plays a huge role in enabling that business process, and I can touch a bit more on that. But the things at the bottom of the slide here, I think, are probably the most important ones. The role of leadership. You know, you can't delegate hybrid work to people further down the organization. It's got to come from the top. It's got to be role modeled. It's got to be part of the culture of the organization. And the reality is we're at the starting gates of this experience. Like, no one really knows what a great hybrid experience is going to look and feel like. We've all got rough ideas, but I think fast forward a year or two, it will look very different. And in that process, you've got to be very humble about the journey, the fact things are going to change quite considerably, and that you experiment in small groups, and if it works, roll it out. Or you can experiment at a company level and learn at scale. So it's that sort of spirit of humbleness and learning and growth mindset that's critical here.
Do you know what? I didn't expect you to say. That's really interesting. So you did it like, and this is something that we preach all the time about, that technology is key, but actually these things come first. It's really interesting that you flagged the leadership, the culture, you know, that's something that we sort of try to encourage. I'm sure that resonates with a lot of the people listening in. But in terms of obviously talking from but bringing it to, you know, people do want to talk about technology, they do want to pick your brains on Teams. So I suppose if there's anything perhaps that you would have covered in terms of Teams, in terms of how best to recreate that, I'd be interested. And then I'm going to come on to ask you a bit about the pitfalls to avoid, which I think people would also be interested in.
And I think that the main message I'd say with any technology is it has to be the enabler of strategy. You know, it can't be the other way around. But you know, certainly from a technology point of view, and especially if we do this through the lens of some of these particular areas, I've sort of talked already about around the importance of role modeling and leaders showing the way, and that goes all the way down to the uses of technology. You know, if you're going to have a hybrid meeting where you've got some people in the room and some people remote, then if you're the most senior person in that meeting, try joining remotely and experiencing what it's like, and also showing everyone, of course, that it's acceptable to do that. But one of the things we have seen over the last 18 months is very high levels of usage of tech. You know, it's been a lifesaver in many different industries, many different organizations, to enable companies, organizations to continue, quite honestly. But usage isn't necessarily equal to adoption, and perhaps one of the clearest things we've seen is a lot of synchronous working. You know, sending chat IMs, jumping on calls a bit like this, but perhaps not so much of the asynchronous working. Really getting the value out of the technology to enable people to work how, when, and where they like. And that's perhaps one of the things that I would encourage anyone to think about, especially with platforms like Teams, is that it is ultimately a collaboration tool as well as a meetings tool and a chat tool. And of course, it extends to allow process and business automation, which I'm going to touch on in a second. But just back to this point on asynchronous working, it's so powerful that I could start a document, I could post it in a channel. And one of the tips I would have for anyone on this call is think really carefully about your hygiene. You know, try and limit how many channels you create and come up with the channels together as a team, so everyone has bought into the way you're structuring that environment. And then when you're creating stuff, post it in the right place. And self-police as well if you're posting it in the wrong place, if you're seeing someone not following sort of the etiquette, if you like, within your team that you've sort of agreed. And so when you start that document and mentioning the people, that's good etiquette, because then they're going to get a little notification they've been mentioned. Allow those individuals to contribute to that project or that document creation in their own time, perhaps with a deadline in mind. And then others in the team can see it. And that's the beauty of working out loud. That's the beauty of working in the open and asynchronously. So I think there's a lot of opportunity now that people have got the technology and they're using it synchronously to really start to think about how to really maximize it in an asynchronous fashion.
I don't know. I want to come on because so that you've touched on a really important point, and provisioning, and you know, lawyers, you know, they can turn teams very quickly into the Wild West. Do you want to talk about what you said about business processing before I start coming on to talk about your tips to sort of avoid that or the pitfalls?
Yeah, and maybe I'll just touch on that a little bit. I've got let me just go to a quick slide on that. Hopefully you can still hear me, because last time I played the video, it crashed my PC.
Is that what it was?
That didn't happen.
Don't worry, I've had ringing in the background.
yeah, we're having all sorts of fun today, aren't we? Yeah, so I mean, when we think about Teams as a platform, you know, we talk about the communication, the synchronous communication. We talk about collaboration. I just mentioned that, but also thinking about how it can customize and extend the experience. And I'll just sort of show one quick slide on this. There are lots of applications that are built into the M365 suite, such as OneNote, such as the Office applications, such as Power BI, such as Planner. Those are all available and integrate very seamlessly into Teams, and they can help you to create very basic kind of business workflows. You know, if you think about the life cycle of a meeting, you might set the agenda. In OneNote, you pin that into the channel, you have the meeting within the channel, you capture the actions within the OneNote, and it becomes a cyclical process for that life cycle. But then you can start extending beyond just the standard applications in M365 into off-the-shelf partner applications. There are hundreds of different experiences that you can download and install from the store within Teams. But perhaps I think the most exciting part of Teams as a platform to enable all of these business workflows to come to life is where you start building custom applications that are unique to the industry needs and also unique to the organizational groups within the team. And that's where we work very closely with Gabriel and partners like ClearPeople to bring those types of scenarios to life. So Teams very much is there as the operating layer and in everyone's workflow on a daily basis, and extensible into very specific scenarios that help to streamline business process.
Thank you. And so let's talk about, so the issue that I come across and I guess we're pretty soon must get to Gabriel's demo, but it's great chatting with you. So tell me about, I think we have to be realistic, in terms of the kind of the pitfalls and how to get over them, because people are, these are very real issues in terms of, mostly around provisioning, information governance. Tell me about, from your perspective, what are your biggest tips or things to avoid from the outset when you're leveraging teams, and how do you perhaps avoid the data sprawl, which I think is the biggest fear amongst people that I speak to?
I think there's a few things. I mean, firstly, I'll come back to that point around usage doesn't always equal adoption. I think having a very clear adoption change management plan in place for your organization or for your individual team of people is really important, so that those that are using the technology understand how to maximize it. And like I said earlier, just setting some ground rules, creating some etiquette, being clear about how you're going to use it is also critical, especially when you start using it for more advanced capabilities, like we talked about a second ago here on this slide. If you're going to actually start running it for your workflow and extending out into, connecting with your own customers, or, using it for particular processes, then you've got to be really clear about how that's going to work. So I think getting out the gates with a clear adoption change management plan, probably number one. Secondly, I'd say the hygiene and self-policing is really important. If you agree to the way you're going to use it and then you don't follow that approach, then you've got to hold each other accountable, hold the mirror up to people. For example, if I only have 7 channels in my team that I have for my own group, and we were very purposeful about that, and we spent a good hour agreeing, like, what were those 7 channels. If you start seeing more channels being created just because people are being lazy and they're not thinking about where they want to place their content, then you've got to jump on that and you've got to stop it and you've got to delete them and keep people on track there. So there's a lot there about sort of the cultural side of the technology and less about the tech itself. But then just finding your own way to deal with what can be quite a lot of information. Probably one of the best things is just mentioning individuals. That as a discipline is really important, because then you can ignore the rest. It's all there if you want to see it. And if you want to go and investigate or be curious about that particular project or that particular document, you can go read it. But if you're not mentioned, it's not mandatory for you to do so. I think that's a really important discipline to get into. If you are mentioned, then there's an action there for you. You've got to do something about it. And that can definitely help to streamline your mind, at least as you're thinking about what to spend your time on, how to prioritize.
Okay. I think if we're probably going to jump to Gabriel, if that's I don't know if we've covered it, but by all means, this is, I love having these conversations, so jump in, at any point when so Gabriel, I think maybe if we I don't want to sort of get pushed too much for time. I think if we can move on to Atlas, and tell me what at the moment, what is it most commonly used for? Obviously, we've talked about its collaboration, knowledge, intranet, DMS. What's it most commonly used for at the moment? Do you see any changes in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start sharing my screen while I'm.
Yeah, just start your demo by all means. We can chat.
So we see businesses typically start in one corner or another. Quite a few start in the knowledge management area. They may have an existing intranet. They know they want to move that into 365, but they'll start in a specific area such as knowledge management, or they'll have specific requirements around search in SharePoint, in Office 365, where they just can't find stuff across all the various teams. So typically a requirement from a business starts from sort of one of those very specific things. And then when we start investigating and looking at that with customer and presenting what Atlas can actually do, you can really sort of start seeing that it can bring together a number of other things. But certainly we recommend don't jump in and the deep end straight away. Start with something where you can easily get some successes, but then use Atlas as a platform to sort of embrace and extend your journey in 365 and bring more and more workloads into 365. So we've had a customer who started with a very specific knowledge management requirement. They moved from that into more of the bid management requirement. And then they moved from that into bringing a legacy intranet into this as well. At the same time as adopting Teams as their primary as the primary sort of collaboration tool. So a lot of these features and workloads then started landing in front of people in the flow of their work. And that's really key to what we're doing.
Well, I'm going to go on mute and I'm going to let you do your demo. If you, thanks everyone. There's quite a few people who've jumped in with how they're using Teams. If you, just so you know, if some of the people have just replied to panelists, so I won't name you, but if you want everybody to see your chat, then make sure you do it to panelists and attendees so everyone can kind of, you know, and by all means sort of reply to each other's comments. I'm going to go on mute, but if you want to ask a question, put it in the chat while Gabriel's speaking, and then we'll come back to it in a minute.
So I've actually got a script, because if I don't, I'll end up talking for an hour. So I've got some very specific points I want to make sure I cover. So I'm going to be looking over here once in a while, because I know myself, I can just keep on for a long time. So where I want to start is, I'm inside a demo environment, and my demo user, Anthony Giles, is in a larger organization. And there's some work that Anthony's doing in the legal team and with the legal team, and we're sort of going to go on a journey there, right? But where Anthony starts in terms of his working day is inside of Teams. So we'll sort of go on the journey from here, and this is the landing area. Now, many of you might have heard about Viva Topics, Viva Connections, etc. And Atlas sits inside Teams as the cradle for the application experience, whether you are sort of in this home experience or whether you are in the individual teams. And inside here, we're actually landing inside the Viva Topics, the Viva Connections experience, which is right here. And that means we can start pushing information to users, such as specific news that has been published. It lands in front of users. This is effectively Viva Connections that Atlas takes advantage of. But the Atlas experience you can see here, we don't have time to go through these things in detail, but for one thing I just want to call out now, because we'll see it come back later as the external user is the Launchpad. You'll see 3 items here. These can be targeted to users. You'll see a rich menu system up here. You'll see a number of things on the right-hand side that allows you to do things like global search. But what I'm actually going to do is, as the external user, because we're going to look at an external collaboration scenario that Anthony here is actually going to collaborate with me, Gabriel, coming in from the ClearPeople tenant, and we're going to collaborate. You can see how we're collaborating together. And as the external user, I'll even get access to some of this rich functionality inside of Teams. We've got a lot of other features, like the ability to be able to personalize and set my links and provide feedback inside of the platform, and so on and so forth. If we quickly sort of scroll down, I should say, by the way, a couple of things. Everything in here is built on and for 365, which means the whole information management and governance, information security, compliance, it all sits on top of 365. So nothing leaves your 365 tenancy. That's super important for many of you. It also fully supports Teams mobile app and SharePoint mobile app. So all this whole experience can land inside of either Teams or Teams or SharePoint, desktop, or mobile experience. So as I scroll down this page here, you'll see there's a little bit of bump here, welcome to, et cetera. You'll see things like Viva Topics integrated into this particular experience. We do a lot of things with Viva Topics, not just the out-of-the-box experience here. We're leveraging that a lot for sort of AI-driven knowledge management inside the Atlas platform as well. And you'll actually see you're able to do things like confirm back to the AI that, yeah, this is sitting in the right place, and so on and so forth. We've got some great learning materials. We can expose that to the external users as well. So you'll see here, for instance, and by the way, do keep in mind that I'm not leaving Teams as I'm going through the experience. There's some learning materials here, so I can click here and it brings it up for me in the context of where I am. And you can see here, we got one of our learning tools or visualization tools called HoverPoint. So as I move around here, I'm being sort of taken through a tour of how a specific feature works. It could be a process diagram. It could be an office chart, diagram. It could be a construction site. It could really be whatever you want. As I hit confirm, we actually write that away, and we know when users have seen this. We've got lots of analytics. So we know when internal users, external users have clicked on a particular item, have read it, have seen it. There's lots of useful information behind the scenes here. As I scroll down, lots of other cool stuff. We're not going to spend much time on that, but there's a lot of stuff that is landing here in front of the user in the way that Atlas is putting it together. Atlas really works, and I'll get to that in a second, but it really works about contextualizing all your content. It brings it in front of you in the flow of your work. We are, of course, here on the landing page, so a lot of stuff is landing here, but as I move around, I'll get more specific information to the context where I am. Here we see a very, very new and shiny dashboard from Viva Connections landing in here. So there's a lot of cool integration and a lot of nice component parts from Atlas that lands in front of the user here. The key is, though, that the experience as you move around is really a consistent experience. So what Anthony now needs to do is to work on a specific matter, right? And there are a number of ways he could do that. He could go via the gateway where clients might go this route as well. And on this gateway here, he would see the client areas external collaboration areas that he's also got access to. But in this case here, maybe Anthony has sort of forgotten where this is. He can't quite remember the name of it. So we've got a number of other tools that allow us to sort of work across all the collaboration areas that are there. One thing you guys might have noticed is that as we start using teams, we get more and more teams, very much to Nick's point, this proliferation of teams. The left rail gets quite busy. It's difficult to figure out where to go. So what we have here is a way to navigate across all of that, whether it's SharePoint and Teams and Yammer, etc. We can navigate all of that from one place. So I can do simple things like I'm looking at something to do with smart. So I can look that up. I can go straight into that team, or I can do the search and I'm finding smart, whatever here. But I might not even remember that it's something to do with smart. So what I might want to do is where did my clear filter go? That's interesting. Okay, I might actually just search for this by subject. So I could have searched for this just simply by going by legal subject, applying that, and I would of course have found that as well. Or I might just remember, oh, it's with an external party called Smart. So I could look for them, apply that, and I'll find the same thing. So we've got loads of ways of getting to this content very, very easily. Importantly, and this really speaks to the 2 points you were discussing before, it's all about that hygiene. It's all about doing things in the right way. It's all about avoiding sprawl. And the way everything ties together is really through the provisioning process. You mentioned provisioning earlier. And so what we do is we allow the business to offer the business users the flexibility and the freedom, but in an IT governed way. So you can set up the rules with which you allow people with business users within the organization to create things, whatever they may be. And you can control who can create what. So for instance, and I've got permission from Shane to show this, if we look at Gowling's example here, they have something like this, where they can create gateway workspaces, and then they've got very specific type of workspaces they can create within the gateways. So if we go back here and we say, well, I want to create a collaboration area, as I go through that process here, there are a number of things that get layered into that workspace. I can just, we can have rules in terms of the names. They have to be crazy names like this, or very specific names. And as I go through that process, I am asked some questions as a business user. What does this relate to? So by filling this information in this simple sort of wizard process and setting up the security for the workspace, I am basically setting the context of that workspace, allowing me that later then to find that workspace again, right? So that effectively means here, they will all be set in context, which means I can now navigate across all of these by simply using my filters up there in the top, right? Okay, so needing to move on quite quickly. So Anthony was looking for, in fact, I should have kept that one in there. He was looking for that particular workspace where he needs to go in and collaborate with the legal team. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on that tile. Before I do that, from here, loads of other nice things we can do. We can go straight into the OneNote, into the planner, into the SharePoint area, into the document library. We can see who else is in this team here. In fact, we can hover over them, get the contact card up. We can chat to them straight from here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go straight into that particular team, landing inside the Teams channel for posting. So here I can have my collaboration with the external user, Gabriel, myself, slightly confusing, never mind. And you can see here there's been a conversation going on where the external party has been sharing documents. My demo user has been responding back. That of course all lands inside the files area, but it also lands inside this experience, which is still the Atlas experience. So you're not going away from that. So you can remain in that experience. You can use the search straight from within the particular Teams channel you're inside. You can do a lot of actions within here without actually leaving Teams. In fact, if I scroll down, you'll see we got the document library here, and we also got the tasks. You might have seen on the dashboard in the beginning, we had a task coming up for me. What I now want to do is I very quickly want to just switch over into my real browser. So this is now me, as in Gabriel. I am now the external user inside the BillPro workspace. So this is now me as a client, as a partner, as a supplier, as an advisor to a firm coming in to that particular firm's workspace where they're sharing and collaborating with me. So what you can see is a very similar experience, but Launchpad, for instance, is very specific to me. I'm seeing things that I, as an external user, can see. I can see to the gate to see that overview of areas I can work with. I can do the full search within this particular area. And you will see also, the guides to external users, guides to my clients, guides to my partners and joint ventures, or whoever's coming in here. How do you work within this particular workspace? So clicking through that, this is all as an external user coming into the Teams experience from outside. I can do all this stuff here, right? As I scroll down, very similar experience, including the meta tasks down below. So really very, very rich collaboration with the counterparty on the other side. As I said, I could have come in via the gateway. I could have come in without Teams. And that's important to know. Sometimes businesses are not comfortable launching the whole Teams collaboration experience straight out to their external audiences. We could deliver this experience here. So this is just going through the SharePoint experience. You're on the gateway, and as the external user, Gabriel still, I can go into the workspaces, client workspaces, Matter workspaces, whatever they might be, my main supplier workspace here. I can go straight into them. I can stay in the SharePoint experience and continue working as if I was inside Teams, or inside Teams as if I was inside SharePoint. I think that's all I've got time for, Caroline.
Yeah, do you know what? I think I'll probably come. I might have time to come and ask you some questions, but I'm conscious of time as well, and bringing Shane in. Perhaps we can sort of chat with you and Shane. There's a question from James. I'm not sure we'll do the question from the registration at this point, because it's quite a big topic to dive into, and I want to bring Shane in. But just quickly, so do you see Teams? Perhaps this is a question, perhaps Shane should answer this. Do you see Teams overtaking Outlook as the primary communication tool, or will we never leave Outlook entirely? How will Teams and Outlook coexist in the future? Just very quickly, who's going to take that? Is that a Nick question?
I think Shane should answer that.
Shane. Actually, let's bring Shane.
My personal view is, I think ultimately yes, but it will take probably 10 years for lawyers to get out of Outlook.
That's what we said 10 years ago, right?
I mean, I'll speak on behalf of Microsoft. We certainly see a role for both the technologies. Email has its own role, and it performs particular tasks very well. But workflow and out loud working in a team where other people need to be part of the process, where documents are stored effectively, where searching is very easy, where extensibility, like the demo we just saw from Gabriel there, is important, then that's where Teams comes in. Shane, I love your ambition, and who knows, maybe that's the direction of travel. One thing I have noticed, by the way, and we've been studying this closely in my team alone, is we have definitely seen a reduction in the amount of email we send. And we typically don't go into Outlook that often now.
Yep.
I probably use Outlook maybe once, twice a day max, and I probably get about 10 emails a day now.
I was going to give an anecdote here, which is, we just talked about the other day, in a couple of us. About a year and a half ago, I did a test internally where I said on Yammer to everybody, Guys, from Monday, I'm not going to be looking at my emails at all, apart from 3 times a day, and anything internal is going to be filtered out. I'm only going to look at customer emails, just to see, because by then we had used Teams for about a year. I had pure internal emails. I had less than 14 in 2 weeks. I had 14 internal only emails. So I think the big shift is internal communication. I think we'll still use Outlook for external communication for a while.
Let's just jump in quickly, because I want to encourage questions, because having said it's really interactive, I don't want to then ignore the questions, but I'm very conscious of getting to Shane. So 2 questions, and I can read this out because it's to panelists and attendees. Hi Steve Sumner. 2 questions. Most firms have a client inception system, be that their finance, I don't know, everyone can read this. I'm going to read it out loud for the benefit of the recording. So most firms have a client inception system, be that their finance system or a vendor offering. Are you able to connect to finance systems to automatically provision workspaces and avoid duplication of data and effort? And secondly, our experience is that Teams has CPU and memory requirements that need considering. Has that been a challenge?
I can say
yes to the first one, you definitely can. And to the second one, yes, you do have some processing challenges when you're comparing Teams, say with Zoom, for example.
One of the tips on the last one is turn off graphics acceleration in Teams. That helps.
Do you know what, Steve? But I think we'll come back to this actually, because if you've got questions for Shane, please put them in the chat. But let's bring Shane in, because I'm conscious that we're sort of deliberately leaving you to last, because I know people are always, in my experience, interested in the experience. So you've been working with Atlas on collaboration today, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so talk about your experiences. So what arrangements did you have in place prior to moving to Atlas, and perhaps tell us about your arrangements in terms of Microsoft as well, in terms of your platform.
Well, we when I joined Garlings, we had a multitude of different collaboration. We had varying vintages of SharePoint for both internal and external communication. We had a third-party vendor platform, again, for external collaboration. We were faced with a particular challenge in that SharePoint 2010 was coming out of support, and we needed to migrate a large number of external collaboration sites very quickly, which was where we selected Atlas as an accelerator. That allowed us to migrate 400 client sites in about, from start to finish, the project was less than 5 months. From inception through to actually migrating 4 months. All right, Gabriel, all right, you can exaggerate. And we did that very, very successfully. But the key thing from our perspective was looking to actually migrate these. Although there was a very tactical requirement, we wanted a strategic solution that we could actually start to build out and provide clients with a very rich collaboration experience. SharePoint Online, the combination with Atlas and the potential with Teams fits that bill completely. It also starts to take us away, and I'm a very keen believer in this, certainly in the time that I've been in the legal sector, is try to get away from legal specific technologies where the skills are very difficult to actually find. So you actually start to utilize more generic, what I'll call generic technologies, where you've got a much broader skills set and skills base in the wider technical community that you can actually draw on. Because I'm sure everybody on this call will know what it's like to try to find certain legal tech skills in the marketplace when you're actually looking for them. So that's a key strategic objective of ours, is to try to actually get that balance right between legal capability, functionality, and the more, should we say, generic technologies, because you can actually, it's much easier to manage the peaks and troughs of provisioning technology where you've got a much broader base that you can draw from. So as I say, we are now actually in the process of extending that. We initially started purely with a SharePoint Online experience, and now we are actually extending that into a Teams environment in a very controlled way. We're starting off in various, we've got a number of, should we say, concept streams that we're looking at. to see how we can actually both engage with our internal users and also then externally as well. We've had some challenges. We had particular tenant challenges where we actually had a shared tenant with part of our organization which we couldn't utilize, so we had to actually create a separate tenant for our side of the organization, and that's delayed our team's implementation in particular. But that's the key thing, is looking at this as very much a strategic platform, and we would actually see this as and I'll happily be shot down in that in 2 years' time no one will actually go outside of Teams in the organization. Everything will be on a Teams, everything from your soft phone all the way through to, you wouldn't even access your finance system outside of a Teams environment. And that's where I potentially see the whole Teams experience going. It becomes the place you land. It's your workspace.
Really interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion in the market around, adoption of enterprise technology versus legal technology. Do you, I mean, in terms of adoption, do you feel like it's been an easier journey? You're obviously very, very sort of optimistic and ambitious in terms of how you'll be leveraging Teams.
You will always get those people who, particularly in law firms, you will always have people reluctant to change. In fact, to be honest, it's like that across different sectors. And I've worked, prior to joining Shoesmiths, I've worked in probably about 5 or 6 different major sectors prior to joining Shoesmiths. I think it's more difficult within a partnership environment to force change, whereas in certain industries, when the chief executive says, we were going to do this, there is no debate. That is it. The decision has been made. There's a lot more debate, a lot more change management, stakeholder management that you've got to go through within a partnership. And I mean that in the broadest sense, not just in legal, but in any form of partnership. You have to, your stakeholder management is much, much more complex.
Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, carry on.
In terms of, I'll just get to this stage and I'm like conscious of time. So in terms of, you've already shared with us where you are in terms of implementation. It sounds like you've got your roadmap relatively planned out in terms of, obviously it's very early days for Teams, I guess. What, in terms of the work that you have done around the collaboration, is it possible to assess, I know one of the things that people are always interested in is ROI, what the benefits, what's your experience to date in terms of the benefits that you've seen, or perhaps measurable ROI?
That collaboration is very difficult to actually put an ROI against it. Equally, we as senior managers.
This is in terms of using Atlas, I should say. Did I say that already? Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, the use of any technology is to try to find an ROI that's, should we say, 100% accurate, because you will always have those tangible things that you can actually quantify, but there's all the quantitative measures that you can't really put a qualitative measure against them. So I can say, yes, in my previous life, I saved £780,000 a year in software licensing by consolidating into an ERP platform. That's measurable. What I can't actually say is how much process optimization and efficiency was introduced into the organization. I can measure that in terms of time, and yes, I can come up with some ridiculous, it saved 800 hours a month, which then equates to, if you then a fee earner level, it equates to average fee earner rate is £550 an hour, and I can put a very large number, but it lacks credibility. So what you've got to do is you demonstrate it through the ease of working that people start to experience. That's the key thing, is if there's less friction, that will be adopted, and the whole ROI debate goes away.
Yeah, it's interesting. So with collaboration, we did a piece of research a long time ago where we were talking about collaboration sites, but a lot of people were still using email to share, right? They were still we going back to the Outlook question. People were using Outlook to attach highly confidential documents and share them with their clients. And I think that comes down to a usability point, doesn't it? In terms of going back to the adoption point. And Is that fair? Have you seen any sort of progress in that sense?
Adoption will come with, are we actually addressing the problem, a particular problem? In our particular instance within Gowling, we had a problem. If we didn't migrate off through a certain timeline, we would have lost the ability to actually interact with some of our clients. So that was a very specific problem that we had to address in a strategic way, giving people a functionally rich environment that they could work with. That was very successful in achieving that. Going forward, they're going to be, it's incremental steps thereafter, I think, personally. We've achieved our primary objective, but now we're actually looking, so we've got a roadmap, we know where we're going, and it might take 2 years to get there, but we're not going to actually put a huge level of change into an organization that, and any law firm these days is all running at 100 miles an hour just to stand still. You've got to actually manage that change management going in. And I think doing it particularly with something like Teams, where the danger is if you don't implement correctly, you've got a one shot at this. If you don't implement correctly, you destroy the credibility of the solution. And then it becomes much more difficult to actually implement. And believe me, I've been in turnaround situations. It's very, very difficult to turn around things when that happens.
Maybe Caroline, I can just to more generally, some trends we're seeing is the role technology plays in retaining and acquiring great talent into organizations. I'm finding that the top 3 questions I get are, what's the purpose of your organization? What are you looking to achieve? How flexible can I work? And are you going to give me the right tools to do it?
Yes, well, that's your point, wasn't it, Shane? I mean, that's a really interesting observation that Shane made about, being able to attract talent and that being easy. I'm just conscious of time. I think so. So in the chat. So Gabby, someone asked about where is it? The conversation about share. Pros and cons of Teams for customer collaboration versus iManage Share. I don't know if anyone, we're sort of run out of time. I don't know if I want to give you the opportunity. Do we want to answer this?
Well, I answered. I don't know iManage Share.
You've done it in the chat. You've done it
well enough to actually comment on, other than, we can expose content from iManage inside here by Connect. So.
And Shane, any last tips before we wrap up? I'm conscious of everyone's time, so we probably need to finish. But any sort of, what would you say would be, Shane, your key learning? I think this is always the valuable thing, and the valuable thing about getting clients as well. Is there anything that I haven't asked you in terms of key learning that you'd like to share?
I think that there's like any major program, you've got to plan out where do you want to get to, because implementing Teams is not just putting in a product and then letting it and letting it lie there. You put it in, walk away. No, Teams is much more of a way of working and a continuous program of improvement that you can actually do. It's not just something that you're going to put in and walk away from. It's something that becomes part of the, I hate the word DNA of the organization, but it becomes part of the soul of the organization that is in a continuous improvement. And that's where I see this. It's not something that you put in, walk away, and you've got to invest that time to see how you can innovate within the platform, what additions you can actually add in. And as I say, we've got a 2-year roadmap. We've planned out what we want to achieve when, and the governance model. And I think our governance model will change over time, because as users become more proficient at using the platform, they will demand extra. And I think you've got to be flexible in that way, that you actually modify your governance model as your user base becomes more capable. But that's the key thing, I would say. Have that long-term goal where you're going. You don't have to get there in day one, in 5 days or 60 days, but just have that journey mapped out and communicate constantly to your business where you're taking them.
Gabriel, did you want to say any last words?
Oh, I think Shane did it brilliantly.
Brilliant. All right, guys. Well, look, I really appreciate your time. So we'll be sharing this recording. If you listen to it on the recording, thank you for joining us on the recorded version. We'll also be sharing some links with you if you want to contact Gabriel and the team. Shane, I really look forward to, perhaps we can do this again, you know, a bit further in the roadmap, when you've sort of moved further down the journey, because I know this is something that I'm being asked about all the time. So it's great to have the benefit of your experience. So thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, until next time.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us in the chat. Bye.
Bye.